Hey, welcome back. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest stories in the history of life on Earth. It's an incredible evolutionary leap. Really, the story of how plants finally broke free from the water's edge to literally conquer the continents. So, you gotta ask, how did it happen, right? How did plants go from being stuck in these damp, shady spots to just dominating almost every environment on land? Well, the answer's all about a brilliant series of innovations that solved one single massive problem. Okay, let's get into it. So our story really kicks off with the first true pioneers of the land, the pteridophytes. Now, when you hear that, think of things like ferns, club mosses, horsetails. They weren't the very first plants to creep out of the water, but they were the first to have a really serious toolkit for living on dry land.
And this toolkit was a huge upgrade. The main plant you see, like a fern frond, that's the sporophyte. And unlike the mosses that came before, it has true roots to dig in, real stems for support, and leaves to catch the sun. But the most important piece of tech here? They had vascular tissues. It's like a plumbing system to move water and nutrients all around. This is what let them get bigger and taller than anything that came before.
But, for all their success, these pioneers had a critical flaw, a real evolutionary Achilles heel that kept them chained to their aquatic past. They had all this amazing new hardware, but one crucial part of their life was still totally stuck in the water. Let's just walk through their life cycle for a second so you can see the problem. A spore lands and grows into this tiny little plant called a prothallus. It's a whole separate, tiny phase of life, and this little guy needs a damp place to live. Then it releases its male gametes, and here it is, the key part. Those gametes have to literally swim through a film of water to find and fertilize an egg. No water, no babies, it's really that simple. And the consequence of this was just massive. The source material puts it perfectly. The spread of living pteridophytes is limited and restricted to narrow geographical regions. This total dependence on water for fertilization meant they could never, ever stray too far from damp places. It put a hard cap on their plans for world domination. But of course, evolution never stops tinkering. And within this group, within the pteridophytes, a really cool experiment started happening. A little glimpse of a way out of this watery trap. And this new idea was called heterospory. So see, most of these plants are what we call homosporous. One kind of spore, that's it. But a few, like this one, genus Selaginella, became heterosporous. They started making two different kinds of spores, tiny little microspores that will become male, and big megaspores that will become female. This specialization, it turns out, was a total game changer. This new strategy led to something absolutely revolutionary, what we call a precursor to the seed habit. So instead of that little female plantlet living all by itself in the mud, it was now held onto and protected by the parent plant. The new little embryo could start its life in a safe, sheltered home. This was a huge first step toward breaking free. And this precursor set the stage perfectly for the next major group to show up, the Gymnosperms. They're the ones who took this idea and ran with it, perfecting it into one of the most important inventions in the history of life, the seed. The name itself tells you everything you need to know. Gymnosperm is just Greek for naked seed, and it means exactly what it sounds like. Their seeds develop right out in the open, not tucked away inside a fruit like an apple. The best example? Just think of the seeds sitting right there on the scales of a pine cone. And the impact of this invention? Oh, it was profound. The seed allowed gymnosperms to become what the source material calls the first completely successful terrestrial plants. They had finally solved the water problem that kept the ferns tied to the shoreline. Now, being free from water meant that gymnosperms could march into all sorts of places that were totally off limits before. They started to conquer the drier, the colder, the more extreme environments all across the continents. They were unleashed. And they had a whole new survival kit built for this new life. We're talking needle-like leaves to cut down on water loss, a thick waxy coating, even sunken pores to trap moisture. They built woody stems to grow incredibly tall. And the masterstroke. Their male gamete was packaged into a tiny, tough pollen grain designed to fly on the wind, not swim in a puddle. So, just how successful did they get? Well, probably the most famous gymnosperm is the giant redwood, sequoia, which happens to be one of the tallest tree species on the entire planet. That's the scale of change we're talking about here. From a tiny little fern that needs a drop of water to reproduce, to a forest giant that literally touches the sky.
All right, let's just put these two strategies right next to each other, because you really have to see it to appreciate just how massive this evolutionary leap was. It was quite literally a shift from swimming to flying.
Okay, just look at this comparison. For the pteridophytes, you have an anthrozoid that has to swim. For gymnosperms, you have a pollen grain that flies on the wind. That single change makes fertilization completely independent of water. And the end result isn't just a simple spore left to fend for itself. It's a protected, food-packed seed with a little embryo already inside, ready to go. It's not just an improvement, it's a complete paradigm shift.
So the seed was the key. It was the invention that unlocked the continents for all of plant life, an absolute revolution. But, evolution never really stops innovating. And as amazing as the naked seed was, you have to wonder, right? Could this incredible invention be made even better?